So we'll move on to our guest speaker today. Tristan Reid is the Director of West Coast Operations for NIST and FedRAMP Advisory Practice at Coalfire. We engage Coalfire to fully assess our Tufin orchestration suite and provide us their recommendations and guidance to support Tufin's continued investment in the federal space here. He's here to share his insight and his experience of working through our product. I'll also download 2 documents that Coalfire authored within the chat window. And I'll also put in Tristan's email so that you may reach out to him directly. Tristan joined Coalfire in 2017 and manages the clients and practitioners through the NIST and RMF. Among these clients are financial institutions seeking FISMA and NIST compliance. Most recently, a financial space, Tristan directed the FISMA authorization to operate effort for a top 5 consumer bank. So Tristan, thank you for joining us. Are you able to share your screen now?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. Just gonna go ahead and share my screen here in just a moment. All right. Are you guys seeing the screen here with the deck, or are you seeing my slide notes?
We're seeing the deck. Perfect.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for coming in here. I'm going to walk through the overall presentation and the work that was performed, as well as the background on overall NIST compliance. Please stop me at any time if you have any questions. This part, as well as the roundtable, is meant to be a discussion, and happy to help in any way I can. So don't hold the questions to the end. If you have them in the middle, happy to stop there. So just to start off here about who Coalfire is in relation to the work that we perform. We are a tool agnostic, fully vendor independent consulting firm that specializes in cybersecurity and also cyber compliance. We have extensive both cloud and on-premises capabilities, anywhere from helping you achieve compliance goals, helping you via vCISO or virtual CISO support, labs or penetration testing services, as well as engineering services. So anything from advisory to assessment and beyond, we're here to help, and we're here to do it with again, a technology and vendor agnostic solution that's customized to your business. So, what this meant for Tufin, we'll get into in a little bit here, and how we were able to help. But primarily, my role helps businesses achieve FedRAMP and FISMA success. So FedRAMP is essentially the NIST 853 series applied to the cloud, and FISMA is the same for the on-prem services. So we'll go through what that means, a little bit of background on federal cybersecurity, and how we were able to help Tufin and work with them. So first off, just a little background on federal cybersecurity and the importance of NIST 853, which will set the tone for the work that we have performed on behalf of Tufin and in support of Tufin. So federal cybersecurity started off with priority in the federal government to protect classified missions and workloads, and had pioneers at the NSA and DoD helping to handcraft what were the selection of controls and what were the important concepts relative to securing classified knowledge and classified systems. As time went on, however, there's a lot more information that became unclassified or more scrutiny around unclassified systems. And with that, so did the cybersecurity emphasis on what those things are and how to protect them. Just going to check the chat here. I see that there's a couple of things coming through. Are any of those questions by any chance?
No.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So what ended up happening for all of, throughout cybersecurity in the federal government, there was a standardized law that came into place, which is called the Federal Information Security and Management Act. And that's this last line item here, and it talks through in 2002, basically setting a standard for a federal information system that was offered on-prem. This is pre-cloud. where if you are a federal agency and you're storing, processing, or transmitting controlled but unclassified information such as PII, PHI, or other activities such as security-related data and other things that an agency will deem sensitive, it's covered under this FISMA Act. So primarily targeted at federal agencies and those in support of federal agencies. So we'll get to why that's important in a moment. But how does NIST 853 apply to FISMA and what we're talking about here, right? So NIST 853 is a comprehensive framework of controls to secure and to operate all different types of federal information systems. So while this standard, NIST 853 Rev 1, was created in 2005, it was since applied to the FISMA Act of 2002 to administer and to work through a common set of controls for federal information security systems and federal information systems. So controls from this NIST 853 special publication are leveraged in both classified as well as unclassified systems as a flexible set of controls that are leveraged to secure different types of workloads. Based on the information that they're storing, processing, or transmitting, you'll see different selections of NIST 853 for different areas. So for low, moderate, and high systems, you'll see different subsections of NIST that are selected. We'll get through that in a moment as well. So lastly, the importance of NIST 853 goes beyond just federal information systems as well. It also goes to what I would argue is one of the parent control families or parent frameworks that are out there. So NIST will map to, NIST 853 maps to NIST 800-171, it maps to CMMC, it maps to PCI DSS, it maps to ISO 27001, and it also maps to plenty of other different frameworks that are either directly a copy of NIST and or tangentially related where they have a mapping. So now that we talk about FISMA specifically, and so when we did the white paper and the product availability guide or applicability guide, which we'll get through in a moment for Tufin, FISMA was the target baseline that we were looking to achieve compliance for. So when we look at FISMA, FISMA is a law, and again, it does not particularly tie to a piece of software. It ties to a system where software, infrastructure, platform, and software are all put together to have a comprehensive end-to-end solution that's there for the federal customer. So what FISMA does is it selects a subset of NIST 853 controls to protect low, moderate, and high information system baseline systems. And low, moderate, and high follows a categorization that's done, or it's called the FIPS 199. And essentially it just goes through what's the information you're storing, processing, and transmitting, and based on guidance from other NIST documentation as well as input from your agency, what level of protection are they looking for a given system to meet, whether it's low impact, moderate, or high impact information. So FISMA itself only applies to unclassified internal agency systems, not private sector companies. However, with the exception where you are doing business on behalf of that system. So there is a large commercial bank that we're running through. Yes, it is administered by a federal or a commercial entity, that bank, but they're doing this work on behalf of a federal agency, and therefore this is an internal agency system. So that part there talks about what it originally applies to, as well as the exception that makes this type of activity, this overall objective of FISMA compliance, relevant in the commercial world. So the rest of this just walks through, who is the body of FISMA and how the FISMA accreditation goes through, which is the OMB, or Office of Management and Budget, is the enforcement and oversight body of all agencies and their subsystems that are commercially offered that must comply with FISMA. So they're the oversight, they're the enforcement. And then NIST, or National Institute of Standards and Technology, is the guidance body that provides the documentation that's relevant, that's been applied to FISMA, as well as several others. Most importantly, anything that you see NIST SP, or Special Publication 800-some number, 53, 171, whatever it may be. These are the guys who actually go through and create that content. So really walking through with this, there's a couple of things that we wanted to walk through for Tufin's orchestration suite. So wanted to explain really the security and compliance benefits that the orchestration suite ultimately offers within the realm of federal compliance. There's a number of frameworks and a number of other associated NIST publications where these types of benefits can be leveraged. So we'll first start off with frameworks and publications considered for this discussion. So first and foremost, NIST 853 and related control frameworks that are based off of 853, which include 800-171, FISMA, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, the NIST RMF, as well as CMMC. Lastly, we have other NIST special publications that help and start talking through just different publications. So the Risk Management Framework is one of them. There's also, NIST 830, which is the guide to conducting risk assessments for any of the above frameworks or others. And then finally, 800-39, managing information security risk. All of these different documents reference ways that the Tufin orchestration suite can help companies comply and be secure. So now on to the work performed. So when we were contacted by Tufin to help with the overall Tufin orchestration suite, the overall level of compliance that a lot of Tufin's customers were seeking was FISMA high. Now, the advantages of having this work done for FISMA high is that it also applies for FISMA low and moderate baselines as well. So FISMA low builds to the FISMA moderate. Everything in moderate has low. Everything in high has moderate and low. So when we start talking about the level of compliance that Tufin's orchestration suite provides within these compliance frameworks, it's relevant to high, but it also applies to moderate and low. So first off, we said, hey, there's a gap analysis that we can do for TOS's compliance where it would be applied to a federal system. So this isn't about the capability, this first part isn't about the capability of TOS. It's about if I am a FISMA system owner and I want to adopt Tufin orchestration suite, will it provide any challenges for my overall compliance story? Will I have any gaps by adopting this software? And the answer here is no, no problems. And yes, will adopting this software maintain my current level of FISMA high compliance or FISMA moderate compliance, or will it not change that compliance? The answer to that question is yes. So there were no gaps that we found that that would ultimately detriment an existing system. And so the next portion of this was, okay, now that we know that it will not present any issues with being adopted from a software development lifecycle perspective or a configuration management lifecycle, let's talk about the value that it has to organizations that would adopt TOS. So, we went through, and Rufi had gone through the different, compliance benefits and the security benefits from an operations standpoint. Really what the product availability guide, one of which that, ultimately Greg has posted here, it walks through in a more detailed manner what the relative security and compliance capabilities of TOS are. And through producing that report and the analysis, a company and a system that would ultimately leverage TOS within their system would meet or partially meet 55 of 343 FISMA high controls. So by leveraging this and configuring it in the right manner to leverage it across your system, you will meet roughly 15 to 20% of the overall controls that you have here for FISMA high. And these controls for FISMA high and the ones that TOS meets span across the three different types of controls that NIST has to offer, which is technical, management, and operational controls. So from this, we're going to go back in a little bit further into the different types of systems that we have and how these, the Tufin orchestration suite applies to 853 FISMA and other controls. So we'll keep walking through this. And again, please stop me if you have any questions. So again, the importance of NIST 853 is not only that it is the basis for FedRAMP, FISMA, 171, CSF, and a number of other frameworks within the NIST family. It's also a framework that can be used as the parent to, say, PCI or to ISO 27001. So it being a largely mappable or pre-mapped solution, what you see here is, being compliant with these controls enables a lot more compliance success across a number of other frameworks. So when we talk about this, a general system or an overall system, systems are generally not NIST 853 compliant. And the reason why is NIST 853 has over 1,000 controls in it. So generally, what ends up happening is you see a subset of these controls selected to form a FIPS 199 baseline of low, moderate, or high. NIST provides guidance for systems for low, moderate, and high, as well as FISMA takes that guidance and applies it to their overall framework as well. So you'll see low, moderate, and high for other baselines, just FedRAMP and other solutions as well. That's going to be based off of controls or a subset of controls in NIST 853. So Tufin Orchestration Suite offers functionality when implemented in a system, and that it can meet or partially meet 55 of the 343 FISMA controls. So these different concepts ultimately, and compliance benefits range these different families of controls within your overall FedRAMP, FISMA, and other areas such as CSF. And so within FISMA and FedRAMP, there are 17 families of controls. And those families ultimately mention things such as concepts like access control, audit and accountability, configuration management, incident response, systems communication protection, which is like network security, and then system and information integrity. So these are all families of controls, and under each one of these, there would be anywhere from 10 to 20 or more controls that would be pertaining to the access control of the system, the audit and log management and accountability of the system. So if you're looking for more details on how TOS ultimately achieves objectives and controls across these different families of controls to total the 55 FISMA high controls, please see the white papers that we published out in the chat, as well as reach out to myself, Brogan, and or Greg for further information. So we're now moving on to other frameworks. So we talked about NIST 853. What about 800-171 and CSF? So 800-171 has a bunch of these different parts, and those parts map to NIST controls. So what we did is we have a mapping of these different parts that then map to associated controls that we already knew. So essentially, of the NIST 800-171 statements that exist, of which there are 35, those 35 statements map back to 27 controls in the 853 baseline. So what this means is that there are some controls that are in NIST 853 that do not have associated 171 applicability. However, the items that are in 171 are fully mapped to controls that are in 853. So that's the reason why these numbers are different, and they're not always one-to-one, but this illustrates the overall compliance benefits of Tufin's orchestration suite and the exact references to where it would meet or partially meet these subsections and sections of controls in 171. So CSF, or NIST Cybersecurity Framework, is a little different, and they map things not into families, but rather functions. So there's 5 functions in FISMA, in the NIST CSF. And the good news is that TOS meets or partially meets controls which map across those 5 functions. So of 108 different subcategories within those 5 functions, TOS meets or partially meets 46 of those 108. So roughly half. So that's very good news for those of you who are looking to implement CSF, as you have a one-stop shop tool that will help you achieve many, many compliance objectives throughout. So another document here is NIST 837, or the Risk Management Framework. So unlike the other frameworks we were talking about before, which are control-based and specific to how do you, implement and operate a system, this goes through and talks about how you take a system from point A and operate to and implement security controls on top of it, assess it, walk through the optimization phase, and then finally continually monitor that overall system. So first step in the RMF, and this is what the what you're going to be dealing with when you deal with federal procurement, is an RFP will come out, and it will say, hey, we need a system that does X, Y, and Z, and we need it to be FIPS 199 high, or FedRAMP high, or FISMA high, or CMMC level 3. Once that statement has been made, they've essentially stated the desire for a system that is categorized as part of the step 1 to meet or exceed the objectives stated within the appropriate baseline. So if we're talking FISMA high, now you have your system categorized as is a high impact system. And the good news is that if they're looking for a specific baseline and they say we want a FISMA high system, then the controls are already selected for you based on the FISMA baseline. So when we start to look at TOS's applicability to the steps within this framework, the next step is implementing those controls. So we know what we need to do. How do we do it, and where do we do it? So implementing those controls is where we start to see TOS and other applications to be used to implement the different policies, procedures, and control implementations in the overall system. So not only can it be used in step 3 to implement the controls, it's also used in step 4 either by an independent third-party assessment offering, or as part of your internal offering to ensure that things are the way that they say they are. It can provide evidence that say the configuration management is done across the system in a compliant manner, and that A tautologically equals A, so expected equals actual. And where not, it will provide that evidence as well. So finally, it also helps in step 6. I stepped over authorize, which is the step that's done by your agency, done by a third party. The tool is used in the assess phase. The authorization phase is a paperwork phase. It's kind of a we accept or do not accept risk phase. But the monitor phase is also where this is going to be incredibly useful, which is for your FISMA systems, for your FedRAMP systems, and for other systems in your look through. There's annual or and other objectives that you need to meet. So whether it's monthly, daily, every 5 minutes, every 3 months, you'll have these SLAs associated with FISMA, FedRAMP, and other systems, such that you will need to essentially produce evidence on demand, and also monitor, detect, and respond to different changes that you'll make in the environment, either planned or unplanned. So TOS will help in all 3 of those steps. So last slide that I have before we move over into the discussion phase is talking about conducting risk assessments and also managing information system risk. So TOS can be used in conducting risk assessments, as we talked about before, in generating evidence of control implementation, and also in monitoring on an ongoing basis that you are still meeting those controls. As Reid had pointed out here, we have the ability not only to set it once, and then you'll see drift after 2 or 3 weeks. We have the ability to continue to monitor and ensure that A equals A, and then also that there's evidence that an auditor could go through and leverage to demark a successful implementation of a given control. And then when we look at, okay, how does TOS's primary design function in as far as what is the value that it provides as far as managing information risk? For the most part, the overall activity here is to detect and alert as far as managing information system risk. So detect and define what is supposed to be, and then using alert logic and other functionality to alert individuals on when things do not equal what they should, when things have moved off adrift, and also to enact change within an organization or a system to meet those compliance and security objectives.
Tufin,